First of all, let's talk a little bit about Silver Chalice, how you got started, who you are, and what you will be.
Sure. Silver Chalice was born around 2009 or so, and really it's a division of the wholly owned division of the Chicago White Sox. Jerry Reinsdorf is our chairman, and it was created to really uncover the intersection of sports and digital. And now that is a no-brainer, I think, in 2016, but I think in 2009, 2010, and those years, it was a little bit of, okay, what do we do with sports and digital? How does that all come together, and how does all that work together? And what's happened over the years is that we have basically been, we are producers and distributors and operators of sports networks that primarily reside on digital devices. So that's your phone, that's your tablet, that's your internet-connected television, whether it's an Apple TV or a Roku device, or on your computer. And so we have over the years have developed 3 different networks, as you indicated, 120 Sports, Campus Insiders, and our first one out of the gate was the ACC Digital Network. Each one of those focuses on different areas of sports, but the common theme for each one of them is we develop these networks in partnership with rights holders. So, for example, the ACC Digital Network was created in partnership with the Atlantic Coast Conference. Campus Insiders was also developed in partnership with many collegiate rights holders. So, for example, we have deep partnerships with the Mountain West Conference, with the West Coast Conference, and the Patriot League for over 3,000 live games. And then finally, in the middle of 2014, we launched a new network called 120 Sports, which is a partnership among Major League Baseball, the PGA, the NHL, Campus Insiders, as well as Time Inc.'s Sports Illustrated division. So each one of these is developed in partnership with rights holders and the like. The common theme is that they're all for this new world that we live in of consuming sports on your phone, your tablet, your Roku or Apple TV device or something like that.
Well, the bottom line, Brendan, is that if this weren't the new world that was going to at least survive and probably thrive and dominate, you wouldn't have spent all this intellectual and financial capital getting in the middle of all of this. And so how soon will it be before the line crosses between over-the-top and digital, or are we seeing the line cross already?
I think we're beginning to see the line cross already. I'm not sure if the question is necessarily where OTT and digital cross over. I really think that there's the crossover line is sort of this digital world that we live in, which includes OTT, combined with the likes of cable television, right? So I think what we'll see over time is that over the next few years is that now the majority of your sports and your entertainment, quite frankly, is consumed on cable television or broadcast television, and then you have some that's consumed on digital. I think what's happening is that those two worlds are colliding together, and I don't think that in the future, I think over the next few years, 2 to 3 years, there's not going to be this notion of I consumed it on digital, or I watched the game on cable television, or on Comcast, or on Roku. I think it's just really coming together in a way where it's, the fan, all they care about is a great viewing experience, and how that game is transmitted, whether it's via a cable television pipe or over internet protocol. I don't think that's going to matter over the next few years. I think that's where we see the intersection come together, and it's happening, I think, extremely quickly.
Let's get practical with that, because everybody's attempting to find a solution, and from the top guys, Sean McManus, Mark Lazarus, and others on down, they're not dabbling, but they're experimenting. And so
Sure.
At the end of the day, do we see common newsrooms and common sports reporting for both the digital and OTT? Do we see separate and competing silos and networks? Do we see the vertical integration that NBC is continuing to pioneer seamlessly for the Rio Olympics and beyond? Is it a combination? Where is it? I assume if you answered this question absolutely correctly, you'd be a saint.
Right. I'm going to get my crystal ball out here a little bit.
Exactly.
I guess. But
get it out because everybody wants to know what the answer to this one is.
Yeah. Well, I think an extension of my last answer is basically that it's all going to come together, that there's not going to be this, a PA sitting in Rio right now is creating content. He or she is creating the best content that they can create, whether that is consumed on a big screen at home or the smallest screen in your office. That's not going to matter. And I think that's where the collision takes place. And so I don't necessarily think that it's going to be siloed as it has been over the last few years. I think it's all going to come together in a very seamless fashion, with the question being asked, what does the sports fan want? And that is just simply great content.
And then let's go even further. Does it transcend the home experience? Decouching is one of the most powerful words you can mention to an owner these days, because you can't have one person sit in the stadium and at home at the same time. And, of course, the answer everybody gives is let's have a great viewing experience in both settings. But does the mobile device bridge the gap? Is the content going to come together beyond the traditional television experience? Does it also include the stadium experience? How does that work?
Well, bringing in the stadium experience is it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that one. I think at home, that's the room that people want to just have a lean back, big screen experience. Now, some of the latest partnerships that we've done in the space are trying to, with Twitter, for example, are trying to sort of bridge that gap and to bring in, with whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, to bring all this social conversation potentially into your big screen experience, as opposed to today where you're watching your 60-inch television and at the same time you're tweeting on your phone. I think the next evolution, kind of the natural evolution of the viewing experience, is to try to bring those together into one seamless experience. That's the experiment that Twitter is undergoing, I think. I don't know if that's going to succeed or not, because, again, I think that too much of that data, too much of that, it has the potential to be too much on the viewer, as opposed to just wanting to consume, my Yankees game on the big screen.
Well, that's an interesting take, and I guess I now have the answer. You're in Chicago, but if you're a Yankee fan, you probably have enough data for the year. So that's enough.
Well, yeah, I am a Yankees fan, and I think I have a lot of data on that. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't need my friends telling me. I have it myself.
I can see why you want to, cut off and go to football maybe. So, but in all seriousness, it is an interesting quandary/question, because you hit it right on the head. Everybody is experimenting and everybody is evolving. Just a couple more from a business development perspective, your wheelhouse. Sure. Do we see future rights deals done as a large rights deal that includes mobile, digital, and every other kind of media that people do or do not contemplate? Or do we see silos where you have the television deal with the event/rights holder, and then you have the digital deal? How's that going to work?
I think it's going to be more of the former than the latter. So I think that, rights buyers are going to be, they have to own, in the future, they will want to own not only digital but also broadcast and cable. You need to own those in order to own the entire viewing experience, or to own that game or whatever it is. So, and I think that's happened over the last few years. I think that, a lot of the large companies, the Disneys and ESPNs of the world, they have seen that, and in many of their deals, if not all of their deals, they are already expecting to include all of those rights as well, whether it's mobile rights or whatever it might be. Now, the rights holders, of course, more than likely want to chop up those different types of rights into different silos, right?
Yep.
And that's where you have the fun of negotiating, whether, are we going to divvy all these rights up into different packages, or is it all in a one-size-fits-all package? And I think what's going to happen is that most media companies will want to buy up all of these rights into one big swath.
I guess the leverage, therefore, rests with the entrepreneurial companies who can maximize the number of events they own or control and the content and networks that they access, own, or control. So kudos to you guys for figuring that one out and implementing it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's where we think we have a plus. A lot of the partners that we have on board, particularly in the college space, the college conferences that I mentioned previously, they really appreciate the way we go about business and the way that we partner with them, as opposed to just simply writing a check. They want the partnership in place and are very interested in how we've been going about the business. So yeah, we think we're doing well there.
What about globalization? Just a couple more. Are you going to be, Silver Chalice, proactive in that space and the space generally? I assume the more global sports transcend oceans, and obviously digital doesn't stop at some countries' borders. So I assume the space is very important, and you're pioneering that as well?
So the space is definitely very important. There's no doubt about that. I will say that we, Silver Chalice, have our work cut out for ourselves in the United States, and at the moment we are focusing heavily in the United States. As you know, Rick, rights are very sports rights in particular are different across the world, right? So whether we're talking about the United States or talking about India or some other country, those are divvied up, right? So we've made our focus the United States in the short term. And believe me, we have plenty of work to do in the United States to keep us busy for a long time to come. How that evolves over time, whether we begin to dive a little bit more deeply into international waters, that could come. But I think right now, for us, anyways, we're focusing on the domestic audience.
Final question for you: the consumer, does he and she feel good about the choices that are going to be available because of the Silver Chalices of the world and the significant data immersion and the digital product and all the things that are happening over the next few years? Should he feel like he's going to get a greater sports experience in the future, or is it going to feel too cluttered and confusing?
I think in the end, it'll be a great experience for the sports fan. They will have more access to the games and the information and the news that they want. So all of this information will not necessarily be delivered on a 24/7 linear basis in which you only have one choice to choose the game that's on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You can choose the one that's on at 2 here, or you can choose 10 others. And we have a lot of that type of – we have a ton of consecutive games on our platform, on the Campus Insiders platform, for example, in which we leave it up to our fans to choose which ones they want. I think so. At the end of the day, it will be a great experience for the sports fan. Getting there, I think, will be challenging, and it will be interesting for the sports fan. It won't happen overnight that it'll be a perfect viewing experience. Like I said earlier, Twitter is beginning to, get very heavily involved in the sports game right now. I think it's very interesting, and we're very bullish on the opportunity with Twitter, for example, to bring in all of their data, to bring in all of their social conversation into the games that we have on our platform to the Twitter platform. That's a great thing for the sports fan. How that ultimately plays itself out in my living room will be interesting. Some fans won't like it. Some fans will love it.
Your candor
the Twitters of the world will have to adjust their own product and their own user interface, I think, to make to make sure that sports fans are happy. So I think ultimately we'll all get there and it'll be great. But just like everything else, it'll be an evolution in the experience, not necessarily happening overnight.
your candor is refreshing and unique, and you certainly got spot on in the industry. My final question, I guess, is how does a Yankee fan work for the owners of the White Sox and keep his job?
Yeah, that's a great question, and Brooks Boyer and I, our CEO, have this conversation all the time.
Right.
I will say that when I joined the company, I made it very clear that the Yankees will remain as my number one sports team for any sport across any sport there is. They will always be number one. But my second favorite team is now the White Sox.
Very well done. And let me just give you some quick advice as we say goodbye to Brendan Canning. JDG, just don't gloat.